She is the owner and caretaker of the Food Forest Garden. It's 9th growing season. It's 170 different species of perennial plants, focused mainly on food and herb production. In 2018, she became a volunteer master naturalist in Ocean County and contributes articles regularly to the Master Naturalist newsletter. Her focus has been placed on integrating native plants into the landscape so many native plants become useful for both food and medicine. Now there's so much here, but you'll explain, but one thing I saw that was very unusual is her greenhouse, which is built from old windows and slider doors. So it seems like you just use what you have and it's that. So Lisa, welcome.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to share my screen with the Zoom folks, and so that you all can see as well. Let's see if we can figure that out. And there we go. I'm LisaMazzucca. Professionally, I am a website designer and an SEO specialist. That's search engine optimization. My education is a double major in visual art and communication. I went to Rutgers for my undergraduate degree. And then I went to the New School at Parsons in New York for a certificate in digital and graphic design.
Wow.
I've always said that building a website is much like growing a garden. You have to tend it and add to it over time for best results and success. However, I did not start gardening until a few years after I started working on the web. In 2009, I planted my first vegetable garden. We were in Beechwood, New Jersey, and my husband and I and my 2 kids, Giovanni and Abigail, lived there from 2007 to 2015. I started out with a very traditional rows and specific spacing garden. I double dug my garden beds and very heavy clay, and with a pickaxe, and incorporated my first batch of lousy, unfinished compost. But you've got to start somewhere. We had a strange front yard situation where landscaping fabric, which I hate, was underneath about 5 or 6 inches of river rock, and then a landscaper had basically skim coated the surface with topsoil, and we hoped that grass would grow.
Wow.
That said, once I grew food, once I coaxed those plants out of the soil, out of those 2 small garden beds, and experienced abundance due to my effort, and watched the miracle of the earth providing sustenance, I was hooked. When it got too cold to grow and plant, I read. I scoured the Ocean County Library for all the garden books and spent cold winter nights reading. I was particularly attracted to permaculture because I had small kids. I was a business owner. I was busy. I wanted to garden with less maintenance because I wanted to grow a lot, and micromanaging a garden wouldn't work for me. Permaculture is an approach to land management that adopts biomimicry. It includes design principles using a holistic thought process. You design your landscape in a way that works best for the plants on this earth that are not being managed by people. This concept, if designed well, requires less hands-on management than a structured garden that's really meant for optimal production and sometimes even mechanized agriculture. I could partner with natural systems and sometimes and to best use space and ecology and minimize effort. I think my first introduction to permaculture was the Back to Eden documentary with Paul Gauci. Could it be that easy? Cover the soil in deep wood chips, don't till it in, no need to water or fertilize, and fruit trees will grow and produce in any soil. Well, no, it's not quite that easy, but it was a good start. In those colder months, I learned to compost and dove into that in a big way. We had mature oaks on the property, and I was always inundated with leaves. Problem solved. The problem is the solution, which is a big principle in permaculture. I read books by many people who've been doing this for decades, and here are some of the resources I wanted to share with you today. But back to Beechwood. My kids were small and helping me outside. I told myself I was investing so much time and energy into setting up these systems to play outside with them and spend time outdoors with them, which we did do, but this was for me. It lit up my soul, and I was driven to do it. Grow more, plant another bed, make another path, a wooded shade garden, guilds of berry bushes, and fruit trees, and perennial herbs, and tea. I could not imagine not doing it. So the kids grew, and so did the garden, and then my dad passed away. My folks lived in Brick, and we were very close, and it was very hard. And when we asked my mom to move in with us, she did. Our current home wasn't right for our family, and so we moved. And I dug up my plants, and I brought as many as I could with me, and I said goodbye to my first gardens. But I cut my teeth here. I knew what I wanted. I made mistakes. I knew what I would never want to do again. No brambles with thorns. They're a nightmare, and you can't really compost them because you're dealing with thorns. It's horrible. And then no 12-foot sunchokes in the front of the garden beds or in the front of the front yard. It's not a good idea. And don't let friends hoard fresh grass clippings and then dump them in your yard for you to use in your garden days later in the summer. They are a slimy, smelly mess, and all the neighbors were very upset for a long time. We moved to a blank slate. New construction built in 2015. We moved in right before Christmas that year. On Google Maps, our property is still a heavily wooded lot. But they clear cut and there was literally nothing there. I brought over some plants to start and was thrilled. I didn't need my pickaxe. No clay, no rocks. I could dig to China if I wanted. Wait, what? No worms, no roots, no life. It was sand, exactly like a beach. Soft, cave in on itself, not a single worm, sand. Okay, let's figure this out. I mulched and I planted. That's the sand.
Yeah. We know that.
I took a class with Jersey Friendly Yards and the Ocean County Soil Conservation District. This was a home gardening seminar where I began to learn about soil and native plants and the benefits of planting native as opposed to invasive or other species that don't support our local ecology. This was new to me. I was planting all the productive things that would grow in my planting zone, which had more to do with average temperature and climate than native geographical ranges. This workshop provided a grant to install to install a native plant garden in your landscape. So I chose to set up a rain garden to capture some storm water runoff that came from my roof, down my driveway, and out to the bay. This was such a great experience. I decided to take the Volunteer Master Naturalist course in 2018, where I chose to focus on native edible plants and learned there were many options to choose from. The beauty of natives was that they evolved in our local conditions. They don't require much fertilizer or maintenance, and they support local wildlife, maximizing the native food web for critters, insects, and birds. I was on my way to converting sand to healthy, microbial-rich soil that could support my polyculture with native plants included. Back to the books, and YouTube, and what I already knew about permaculture. Organic matter was my friend. Deep mulch and sheet mulched beds were helpful. No-dig methods allowed the soil to take on structure without becoming compacted, and let the worms and critters do the work of aerating the soil. Nitrogen-fixing plants, positioned as companions, help to pull nitrogen out of the air and fix it in nodules along the roots to improve the soil, bring the worms, bring the life. The sand swallowed up plants for the first couple of years.
Yeah.
Some made it, some died. I learned all about soil health from soil scientists like Dr. Elaine Ingham and Dr. Christine Brown and Dr. Chris Nichols, and expert educators and growers like Matt Powers and David Montgomery, a geologist. I learned that biodiversity is key, which is your last principle over there, I believe. Diversity. And the permaculture tenet of planting a polyculture made sense, not just to maximize space and yield and deal with pests and attract pollinators above ground, but diversity influenced and improved the soil below ground as well, where we couldn't see. Different plants farm and attract different microbes. And the more microbes, the more they use organic matter to build the soil environment for them to happily live and multiply and support the plants. If you build it, they will come. Plant the plants, add the mulch, pull the weeds, provide the water. Right plants, right place, and the system builds itself and recycles nutrients and gets better and better, and you get to watch it and help it and be part of it. There is no place where I belong as much as I do in my yard. Walking among the trees and bushes and flowers and buzzing things and birds singing and abundance. I don't even want to wear sunglasses when I'm out there because I don't want to block any of it out. And over the years, we've built the soil, and I've learned to make biochar and homemade charcoal that can be primed with nutrients in the compost and added to sandy soil, infusing it with stable carbon structure for microbes. I began to build infrastructure, a compost and rainwater collection system, a substantial arbor for hardy kiwi vines, and during the height of the pandemic, I built a DIY greenhouse from recycled windows and old slider doors with my husband.
Oh, wow.
And this is the process of that happening.
Wow,
Wow.
that's impressive.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So that's what that looks like. This is why I do it. Why I'm driven to grow.
Wow.
And this is the Mazzucca homestead. MyNJGarden.com is my garden blog where I've kind of tracked my journey. This is Bayville, June of 2004, 8.5 years in. I took these pictures yesterday.
Wow.
There is still sand, and the lawn is not awesome, but I don't care for grass. I'd mulch the planet if I could. But grass makes my mom happy, and so I try to keep up with it. In my garden blog, I wrote this this is the rain garden now. I wrote this in March of 2020, near the beginning of lockdowns. My garden has always brought me joy and a sense of purpose. When I'm worried, I see leaf buds swell on shrubs and trees, watch bees buzz and wiggle inside blooming flowers, and see hints of new green comfrey leaves rising up from the shriveled refuse that was last season's foliage, and my shoulders relax. I smile in spite of myself, and I walk around and visit my plants, and I know in my heart I'm right where I belong. I confidently care for my landscape, experiment with different plants, methods, and projects with ease and enthusiasm of informed instinct. Now, in light of what's happening in the world, I wish more than ever that others would see the value and benefits of gardening and growing food and creating an edible landscape. I can't help but look up to God and nod in agreement, as if to say, I get it now. This is why you put me on this path. We've been training for this, haven't we? Building healthy soil and saving seeds is like putting money in the bank. In fact, it's better than that. You are building a resource and creating resiliency to potentially debilitating circumstances. Yes, it would be worthless effort if, in the face of fire or earthquake or tornado, which could wipe out our immediate environment and belongings, but this isolation and possible supply chain disruption, locally sourced essentials become much more important. I can always improve and add skills to what I've been doing. The next obvious step for me is preserving the food I grow. So beyond freezing my fruit and produce, I need to make an effort to practice canning and drying what comes in from out of the yard. These are fruit tree guilds that are set up in a food forest system. And food forests are designed in layers, just like a natural forest. So there are the shade trees, the canopy layer, and then there are understory trees, and then shrubs, and then an herbaceous layer down at the ground level, and then a root layer. And all of these can exist together in the same space, which maximizes production and takes advantage of the natural systems. Some of these understory trees need the shade that the canopy provides, and yet they can still be productive, especially our native choices like serviceberry and spicebush and things of that nature. These are the largest of the native trees in the yard. They're pawpaws. Have you ever had a pawpaw? So pawpaws are North America's largest native fruit. They're about the size and shape of a mango, but instead of one big pit, they have a few thumbnail-sized seeds inside them. And they taste very tropical. They're kind of between a mango and a banana. They lean more mango for me, but it depends on the variety. And they're easy to grow because they evolved in this soil. They don't care that I live on sand. That's what they want. And so these are a lot of what you can grow on your own if you set things like this up are things that you can't buy in the grocery store because pawpaws are ripe for a very short amount of time and they don't travel well and don't make it through commercial mechanized packaging and such in a positive way. No one would buy them off the shelf. By the time they saw them, they'd be brown and shriveled and weird. But when you get them out of the yard, they're fresh and wonderful. And that's all I have for you today. I wanted to let you know these are baby pawpaws. straws. That's what they look like right now.
Ah.
But they get big. And so these are pictures from the yard currently. That kiwi arbor is now covered with kiwi vines. People are typically surprised that you can grow kiwi here. They are not native, but these are called hardy kiwi. They do grow on vines. They're very aggressive vines, so they'll grow up to 10 feet plus in a season. And they actually produce what's more like a kiwi berry. They're like large grapes. And the entire thing is edible. You don't have to peel
Peel
the
them
fuzzy layer. But they taste just like kiwi. If you cut them open, they look just like kiwi. They're green with little seeds.
Just teeny.
Yes, that's what they are. And my backyard is ruled by a 12-and-a-half-year-old yellow lab who would get into this stuff if she had access to it. So a lot of my backyard is in raised beds, but this is the inside of the greenhouse. I do grow greens in there. I start seeds in there, and I grow brassicas in there because the cabbage moths take them if I leave them out in the yard. Here's some more raised beds. And this is, yes, there were figs in that pot. This is the side yard where I have that compost system. Right in front here you can see May-apples along the floor. May-apples are a native plant. They're also called mandrake. And every part of the plant is incredibly toxic and dangerous. You should not eat it until the fruit is very ripe. And then you can eat the fruit. Who figured that out? I have no idea. But so mandrake, mayapple, and you'll find them in deep shade along the forest floor, which is hard to find productive fruit producing plants in deep shade. Many fruit plants like full sun. So that's what I meant when I say right plant, right place. There's mountain mint and fennel. Fennel is not native, mountain mint is, but I enjoy fennel in the garden because it is a host plant for eastern black swallowtail butterflies. So and it comes back every year. They like dill and parsley too, but that's annual and I have to replant that. So the fennel comes back. This is moving onto the other side of my front yard, so I don't have any part of my yard that is off limits to planting. It all gets plants in it. And a raised bed area again. I do pull extra plants. Many of the native plants that I enjoy reseed themselves, and so I have seedlings coming up, and I can't destroy perfectly good growing plants. So I do pull them and I share them with friends, and sometimes I sell things on Facebook Marketplace. Right now I am on the board of a local nonprofit charity organization called A Need We Feed, and they help feed hungry people throughout Ocean County. They get meals from local restaurants, and then they have volunteers that deliver them to these folks. Many of them are seniors and veterans and families who are struggling, and some are homeless. So they were, during COVID, they had financial support from the state via a grant that was very helpful and allowed them to help a lot of people. But now we rely on fundraisers and donations, and we're running a 50-50 right now. But as I pull things from the yard and pot them up, I have native plants to sell, and I would like to help to support A Need We Feed. So anything that I get from my sales, I donate to A Need We Feed. So if you're interested in native plants, I can definitely supply you with a list that I can share. And this is the end. This is a grape arbor. There are fava beans planted among the grapes, because fava beans are in the legume family, and legumes, anything in the legume family, is going to be those nitrogen fixing plants where they can take nitrogen from the air and fix it in among
Wow.
the roots and improve the soil for the plants around it. So that's how
That's
I like to fertilize if I can. I hope this was helpful.
Oh,
Thank you so
great.
much.